Okay, so let's get started. So we want to go to the main issues of Tanga. Then we want to try to compress and cover everything in the time ya Sarah. So there are areas a good time with we usually started by costing, but there are also theoretical aspects that we usually skipped. So I want us to quickly go through the theoretical aspects. Then from there, we get into we have a quick recap of the costing methods, and we move. Then also I'll try to make sure after every session, I'll give you work that I want you to go and attend. So for performance management, so that's performance management. So the first thing that you need to have an understanding of is information systems. So you're going to recognize that nowadays, most companies, they are making use of IT devices. So most of the information is being done on the internet. We're now storing our data on the internet. We're now using the data analytic tools to gather and for data mining purposes. So even for your exam, they are going to ask you questions regarding IT. You are likely to get them theory, because this is an area that the examiner is fond of. It's an area that is affecting most businesses. So they've tried to incorporate this in the past exam questions. So let's start with information systems and technology. So let's start with information systems. So I'll send you a slide, but these are just supplementary notes. Information systems. Information systems.
Hello, sir. Yes, and that was in dance 2 hours. It was just a way with a brush off the idea. So that was what Mama Tumbo Tumira and I doubt that confirmation with Mama Tumira.
So information systems. So for the information systems, these are systems that are concerned with recording, storing, and processing of information. So we're going to share some information systems. These are hardwares and softwares. These are hardware and softwares used for recording and processing of information. So nowadays, companies are making use of different types of softwares to record information and process information. So these can be termed information systems. The systems that we as an organization are using to record, process, and store information. Then the information systems, they can be used at 3 levels. So we can use the information systems when we are inputting or we can say when we are gathering the data. So they can be used when we are gathering the data. So these are the data extraction tools, such as they can be able to generate large volumes of data. My customers, how are they behaving? What is it that they want? So we can use the information systems when we are gathering the data. We can get to use the information systems when you're processing the data. We can use them as well when we are reporting the data. So the information systems, they can be used at data mining stage, or they can be used when we are processing the data. They can be used when we are reporting the data. So uses of information system. Then let's move on. Can I trigger this data? Data, then we process it to become information. So we have data, then we have information. The difference is that if it's data, it's consisting of unprocessed facts. If it's data, it looks at unprocessed facts. So we gather data, then we process it to become information. So data consists of figures and numbers that have not yet been processed. It consists of figures that have not yet been processed. It consists of figures that have not yet been processed. That's data. It consists of data. It's data to tell some numbers we have gathered, and there are 20 people that are buying our product, but we don't know why they are buying our product. So we have gathered it in the form of data. Then we can process that data to become information. We can process that data to become information. So information now, this is data that has been processed. This is data that has been processed to give it a meaning. Data that has been processed to give a meaning. That is now information. So if it's now information, it's now processed data. It starts as data, we then process it to get information. It starts as data, we process it to get information. So let's move on. Why do we need the systems that help us gather, process, and report information? So again, say the importance of information systems. So why do we need these systems that help us gather, process, and store information? So these processes, these systems, they help us to make better decisions. So there's better decision making, because if we have the data mining systems that can be able to process large volumes of data, we can be able to observe the behavior of our customers. China companies sana Facebook, they're making a lot of money simply because they have information regarding the behavior of different people. So they have information. If you are maybe marketing, they can be able to tell what munuyano farachi zarinyanya kuklika. Once you can go click an advert, bakutanga kutokupama adverts anechekuita nezvozvo. So zvinovabatsira kuti they can be able to process large volumes of data kuti vangani vanhu vari into this type of industry. Kana vakanozokwanisa kutotanga kutengesa that data kune vanhu vanenge vachida kuita marketing, they can be able to use that data for better decision making. So that's the first benefit of being able to process large volumes of data, or having tools that can manage large volumes of data. We make better decisions. So there's better decision making if we are able to have these tools that can help us gather data. So we pay those agents such as Facebook. Why? Because they have the devices that can be able to handle large volumes of data. So if we want to make decisions, we need that data. That's why we need to pay them to help maybe with the marketing, to help with understanding the behaviors that are taking place in the market. Because with that type of data, we can be able to make better decisions. So in an organization, having these systems that can be able to process data, record data, and store data is not batsira for evidence. Can I tell you auditing? My auditors, they come and look at that data that you have been able to gather, store, and process. So these systems, they help to provide evidence. They provide evidence. which can be used by auditors. So they provide evidence that transactions did take place and also when did this transaction take place. So they do record information regarding the transactions. So that is okay. Those joining online, confirm, is my screen sharing? Hello, is my screen sharing?
Yes, yeah, it's sharing.
Okay. So the importance of information system is for better decision making, providing evidence. So the information systems, they can help us gather the data that we will present to the auditors. So when the auditors come to check the books of the company, they use the information that has been generated by the information systems that have been stored by these information systems. Then when we are making plans and budget, it helps us again for planning and budgetary purposes. For planning and budgetary purposes. So the information systems, they can help us make plans, they can help us prepare budgets. The information systems, because when you are now making plans for the future, it's based on the information that you have. So having the right amount of information, being able to gather the right amount of information, it can help you make better plans and better budgets for the business. So we budget based on the information that we have been able to obtain. Then also, besides that, for performance appraisal, so the information systems, they gather the data that we can use to assess the performance so that we can be able to determine whether the entity is doing better or worse than we had targeted. We can use the information we have recorded to determine our performance. So the data can be used for performance appraisal. These information systems, they can be used to gather data for performance appraisal. Then also, maybe lastly, the data that we have been able to gather, process, and store using these information systems, it can be used for control purposes. The data can be used for control purposes. So if the data is being used for control purposes, we are using the data. If we are using the data for control purposes, we are using it to tell whether the business is going in the right direction or not. So we use the data that we've been able to gather and store and compare this data with what we were targeting. So if the data that we have stored is different from what is actually taking place, it can show us that there is a problem. So the data we have generated using these information systems can be used to tell us where things are going wrong, where control is needed. So being able to have the systems that we use to gather, store, and process information, we can have quite a number of benefits such as these. Then now let's move on. Let's now move on and look at the costs and benefits of these of these information technology systems. So we have the costs associated with the information technology systems. So remember the information technology systems, these are the systems we use to gather, process, and store data. So what are the costs associated with information technology systems? So the costs associated with these information technology systems, or maybe before, okay, we'll end with the benefits. So, but the importance, those are simply the benefits. So there is no need for us to talk about the benefits. So the costs of using these information systems are, normally you have to pay a lot of money for you to initially install these systems. So there are high costs of initially installing these systems. High costs associated with high costs associated with purchase and installation of these systems. The purchase and installation of these systems. So there are high costs associated with acquiring these systems and also installation of these systems. Then also we need to train our employees. So whenever we have these systems, they're constantly being upgraded. So we have to constantly train the employees. So there are high costs of training, high costs of training our employees to be able to use these IT systems. High cost of training our employees. So also the other issues associated with using the information systems, we are going to have high maintenance costs. These systems, they have to be constantly upgraded. Unlike using a manual system where we are recording in our notebooks, you don't need to be upgrading these notebooks, but there are high costs of maintenance and upgrading the systems. There are high costs associated with maintaining and upgrading these systems. Then the systems generate data which can be used at 3 levels. So the systems generate data which can be used at different levels of management. So the levels of management that make use of the data that we've been able to generate using these information systems. We have the strategic level. So the strategic level, this is where we make long-term plans for the organization. We make long-term decisions for the organization. So at strategic level, this is where the information is used for long-term planning. For long-term planning of the business. So the information is used for long-term planning. So at strategic level, we are taking the information that we have generated using the systems to make plans that can go maybe 5 years of the organization, more than 5 years. So that is at strategic level. It's long-term planning for the organization. So we are using the information we've generated to make long-term plans. Then also, the information can be used at tactical level. So if it's tactical level, this is medium-term planning. So the information is being used for medium-term planning. So we can have the strategic level managers. These make long-term decisions for the organization, but the tactical level managers, they make medium-term, 2 to 3 years. So they work on the strategic plans. They break down the strategic plans into medium-term plans. So the senior managers can have a 10-year plan, but the tactical manager breaks this 10-year plan into 2-year targets, what we should have achieved in every 2 years to meet that 10-year plan. So the tactical level managers, they use this information we've generated for medium-term planning. Then we have the operational managers, operational level. So for the operational level, we are using the information we have generated for the day-to-day running of the business. So these use the information for day-to-day operations. So if we are using the information generated for our day-to-day activities, that can be regarded as operational level. So we use the information for strategic level planning, tactical level planning, and operational level planning. So the information can be used for the different levels of planning. Then, if we are using the information systems, it's very important to make sure there are controls. Before we get to the controls, let's look at elements of the information systems. So when we are communicating using these information systems, there are issues that assist the gathering, the processing, and the reporting of the data. So we have number one, internet. So we must have internet. So the internet is the World Wide Web. So this is a global web that connects different computers. So when you're gathering the information, it might be gathered from the internet, which is a global network which connects different computers. Global network which connects different computers. So the internet, we are looking at the global network that connects millions of computers. Then besides the internet, we also make use of, we have the softwares. So these are the systems that we install in the computers that assist us in the gathering, processing, and reporting of the data. So these are the systems that assist in the gathering, processing, and storage of information. Then besides the softwares, we also have the hardware. So the hardware, this is now we are looking at the computers that we are going to make use of, where we are going to install these softwares. So the hardware, these are the computers or devices where the softwares are going to be installed. So the computers or devices where the softwares are installed. Then also, we might need the network. So the network, it can be a wireless network. So if it's a network, this allows the communication of the, so the information can be on the internet. So it has, for us to be able to share this information, we need the network. So the network can be an intranet or an extranet. So let's have an intranet. An intranet, this one is a private network that allows communication within a confined area. So if it's an intranet, this is a type of communication maybe that only allows when we're in the same building to share my messages. So intranet, this is a private communication network. That allows the sharing of information by people in a confined area. So it's not everyone who can access this information, it can be sharing information only to those that are within the same building. So we can use it to communicate with our employees. So once they get to the building, they start receiving these messages. So the intranet allows communication with within a confined area. So this is a type of a network that is only accessible to people within the organization or within a confined area. Then the extranets, these ones can allow communication with people outside the business. So the extranets. This can be accessed by those within or outside the organization. This can be accessed by people within or outside the organization. So these are some of the issues we can come across during the recording, processing, and gathering, recording, and processing of information. Now, let's move on. So now companies make use of what we call cloud computing. So companies make use of cloud computing. So we have something called cloud computing. So cloud computing involves storage of the data we have gathered on the internet. So this is when the data, the information we have gathered is now being stored on the internet. The data is being stored on the internet. So that is cloud computing. The data is being stored on the internet. So if it's cloud computing, the data is being stored on the internet. So this has quite a number of benefits. If as an organization, we are now using cloud computing, where we don't need to keep the data in the organization, in the hard drives, or we don't need to keep the data at our physical premises, but it's being kept on the internet. What are the benefits of cloud computing? So the benefits of cloud computing are as follows. Number one, we can say, if the data is being stored on the internet, if we are storing the data in the internet, on the internet, it means that we can easily access the data. We don't need to go to the office so that you can access the data. Sheropauri, as long as there is internet, you can be able to access that data. So the data can be accessed in various places. So that's increasing convenience. So there's more convenience. So we don't need to go to the office to access the data. If the data is stored on the internet, we can easily access the data. Even Urukumba, you can access the data. So you don't physically need to visit the office. Then also, there is the risk of system upgrades is transferred to the cloud company. So it's no longer our responsibility to make sure the systems are up to date, because we'll be hiring the cloud services from a cloud company that will be storing that data for us. So Isusu Oranzipaichka any system upgrades, the company that is handling that is providing us with the cloud services, they are the ones that have the risk now to upgrade. So we don't need to be constantly upgrading to new systems. And also, low cost of investment in computers. In, okay, let's say physical storage devices. So it means we are no longer going to have costs of buying storage devices. So we cut on the cost of buying these storage devices. Then lastly, maybe we can just say the data will be safe from physical hazards that can affect if there is fire, there are floods. These are likely to harm the data that we have if it's in our physical devices. So if it's stored on the internet, the data is free from physical risks such as fire. So it won't be affected by these physical risks. So the data will be free from these being affected by these physical risks. Then, when we are gathering the data, before we can, or maybe still on cloud computing, there are dangers of cloud computing. Storing the information on the internet. So dangers of cloud computing. So if we are storing our data on the internet, what are the dangers associated with that? So if the data is being stored on the internet, the first danger is there is less control over the data. So it means now we rely on the cloud service provider. Anenga ari our data, they are the ones that are going to be having more control over that data. So if there is a system, if the system is down, we have less control over that data than the person who is actually providing us with the cloud services. Also, the data can be accessed, or there is a high risk of cyber attacks. So the data can be accessed by third parties through hacking. That is cyber risks. So cyber risks, these are the risks that third parties will try to access that data. Third parties will try to access that data without being given our authorization. Third parties will try to access the data without being given our authorization. So as a way of protecting the information we have gathered, either the information that we have in-house or the information that is stored on the internet, we need to put controls. So there is need to put controls. Just a moment. Just a moment. So dangers of cloud computing. So we're now moving to, we need to put in place controls to make sure the data that we have obtained in-house is safe. And we need also to make sure the data that we have stored on the internet is also safe. So we need to put controls in generating the data and storing the data. In generating generating, storing, and reporting the data. So when we are generating the data, we need to put controls to make sure we are getting the right information that we need. So when we are generating the data, what is it that we need to do to make sure we generate the right type of data? So to make sure we are generating the right type of data, we should use the same layouts and formats so that if there is any problem, we can be able to pick. So if the data is being generated in the form of maybe histograms, in the form of pie charts, in the form of the different ways we can use to, we can use in the form of pictures when we are generating the data. So the same method and layouts must be used. The same method and layout must be used when you're generating the data. And it must be generated from the right sources. The right sources of data must be used. So the right sources, these must be reliable sources. The sources where we are getting the data must be reliable sources. Then after the data has been generated, it must then be stored within the business. So when we are storing the data, there are controls that we can also put in place to ensure the data, you can just say storing and processing the data, storage and processing of the data. So if the data is now stored in the organization, we need to make sure, number one, no other unauthorized personnel are going to access that data. It must be kept safe. And also the processing tools must be the right systems. So the right systems must be used to process the data. The right systems must be used in processing the data. Then we have passwords. Passwords and firewalls. Can be used to prevent unauthorized access to that data, to prevent unauthorized access. To that data. So you can use passwords and firewalls to prevent unauthorized access to that data. You can have physical controls such as putting the data in protected areas. Physical controls such as putting the data in locked up areas. You can put the data in locked up areas where it cannot be easily accessed. Then we need to put controls over reporting of the data. So when you're putting controls over reporting of the data, we are making sure that the information is only reported to the right people. Because if information is reported to the wrong people, they can make use of it against us. If the competitors get to know of the information we have gathered, it can be used against us. So we need to make sure the information is being reported to the right people. So the information must be reported to the right people. The information must be reported to the right people. Information must be reported to the right people. So if the information is being reported to the right people, this prevents maybe confidential information being lost in the business. So confidential information must not be available to everyone. So once we've gathered the information, we have recorded it, we need to protect it, make sure there are controls to make sure we gather the right information, put in place controls to make sure the information we have gathered is protected, put in place controls to make sure we report the information to the right people. Now, the information that we make use of, it can be generated from internal sources or external sources. So the sources of information, we can get the information from internal sources. So if the information is being generated from internal sources, it is being generated from within the business. So if the information is being generated from internal sources, it's being generated from within the business. So if it's internal sources, the information can be generated from within the business. So this is where we are making use of our existing accounting records. We can ask the staff, questioning the staff, the employees of the company. You can also get information from observing the behaviors, observations. So we can get the information from making observations. So we can get internal information, or we can make use of external information. External information, this is information that has been generated from outside the organization. So it's generated from sources outside the organization. It's generated from sources outside the organization. So for external information, it's generated from sources outside the organization. So external information is generated from sources outside the organization. So with customer, we can get the information from customers. We can get the information from our suppliers. You can get the information from, it could be from the professional board. So as long as it's being generated from outside the organization, that makes it external information. Then let's move on. So the systems can generate information from within the organization or from outside the organization. So when the information is being produced, there are what we call direct data capture costs, processing costs, and inefficient use of information. Let's just say cost of producing information. Cost of producing information. Cost of producing information. The costs can be broken into, or we can say classified into, direct data capture. We have direct data capture costs. We have processing costs and inefficient use of information. So we have the direct data capture costs, we have the processing costs, and inefficient use of information. So if the information is being gathered, if the information is being gathered, what are direct data capture costs? So if you're looking at the direct data capture costs, these are costs which are associated with generating the data and making sure it enters into the system. So these are costs associated with capturing the data into our system. Into our systems, such as using costs associated with using the barcoding or scanners, or such as cost of scanning. Such as cost of scanning the data. So these are the direct data capture costs. These are the direct data capture costs. Then we have the processing costs. So we capture the data, then we have the processing costs. So these are costs associated with now converting that data into different, so you're now making use of the data to derive useful information from it. So these are the costs associated with. These are the costs associated with converting the data to useful information. So such as the cost needed in acquiring the right softwares. costs of acquiring or of getting the right software. Then we have can talk about inefficient use of information. There's a cost associated with failing to use the information you've generated. Inefficient use of the information. So the inefficient use of the information, we can look at failing to interpret the data you have gathered and processed. So the data is there, but you fail to use it to derive a meaning, or you end up collecting data that you don't need. So you've gathered the information, but you fail to make use of it for better decisions. So we have mentioned that we have 3 levels of management. We have the strategic level, we have the operational level, and we have the tactical level. So these levels, they use different types of information systems. So there are different types of information systems that we make use of. So types of information systems. The types of information systems. We have the first one called the management information system. Or yes, we can start with the management information systems. The management information system. This provides information which is mainly used by tactical and strategic managers. Tactical and strategic level managers. So it provides summaries of the information that has been generated. So the management information system, this system provides summaries, can provide summaries of the information gathered. The system can provide summaries of the information gathered. The system can provide summaries of the information gathered. So the system can provide summaries of the information gathered. The system can provide summaries of the information gathered. So, for example, if the sales have been generated, it can give us a summary of how each branch is performed in terms of my sales on the monthly basis. How much did each branch make? So it can compile all the transactions that were taking place and give us a summary for decision-making process. Then we have the transaction processing system. So the organization may have a transaction processing system. The transaction processing system records all of the daily transactions of the business. So it records all of the daily transactions. Of the business. So the transaction processing system will be recording the day-to-day transaction of the business. So this information recorded by the transaction processing system is mainly used by the information recorded by the transaction processing system is mainly used by operational managers. So the information that they record, that the system records, is mainly used by the operational managers. So it's mainly used by operational managers. The information is mainly of use to operational managers. Then besides the transaction processing systems, we also have the decision support system. So the decision support system, this one, it assists the organization in making complex decisions. So decisions that are normally not once-off decisions. So this is for once-off decisions in most cases that are not commonly faced by the organization. So we are dealing with a complex decision, so we can make use of the decision support system. This can assist the organization to tackle a complex problem. So it can be used to predict, when you're making a decision, it can be used to predict the various possible outcomes of the decision. So it can predict the possible outcomes of the decision, the decision at hand. So you can use it to determine which one is the best outcome. It's mainly used by tactical level managers. So the system is mainly used by tactical level managers. So it can be of use to tactical level managers. It can be of use to tactical level managers. Then besides the decision support system, we also have the executive information system. We have the executive information system. So the information can also be generated using the executive information system. So this one makes use of, it generates both internal and external data. So it doesn't just use internal data, it also generates data from the external environment. So this gathers both internal and external data. The system is capable of gathering both internal and external data. So this information is key, especially at strategic level. If you are making strategic level decisions, we need to be knowing both internal and external data. We can't make long-term plans just looking at the internal environment. We also need to analyze the external environment. So this information is key for strategic managers. So the information gathered by the system is mainly of use at strategic level management. The information is key at strategic level. So in summary, we can say, or maybe let's add on, we can also have the customer relations management system. So these are systems that gather data that we make use of in the business. So customer relations management system. So the customer relations management system, this one is key in helping us analyze the behavior of our customers. So it can be used. It can be used to manage. It can be used to manage customer interactions. It can be used to manage customer interactions and improve customer service. So we are monitoring how our customers are behaving so that we improve our customer service. So this system can be used to manage our customer interactions with the aim of trying to improve how we help our customers with their needs. So that if it's a customer relations management system, we want to improve our relationship with our customers. It helps us to create a better relationship with our customers. So it captures data. It captures data regarding customers' behaviors. In order to determine what the organization may do to satisfy the needs of this customer. So it can help us determine what is it that they are buying the most this time. What is it that the customers are buying? So that can help us decide what should we concentrate on more. Which products should we provide? So the customer relations management system helps us to identify the behavior of our customers so that we make decisions that are going to make them happy. Then let's move on and talk about big data. So the systems should also be able to, if we are having good systems, they should be able to handle big data. So nowadays, companies that are able to manage big data, they are at the top because it can help them make better decisions. So with big data, so with what we call big data, so what is big data? If we are looking at big data, this is data that is large and complex. To process using traditional processing applications. It's large and complex for you to process it using the traditional applications. So it means if we are able to handle big data. We can be able to access large volumes of transactions in the business. We can be able to manage large volumes of transactions. So there's data that we cannot be able to manage using the manual system. We need softwares to handle that type of data. So if it's large volumes of data, we can classify that data as being big data. So big data can come in different forms. So forms of big data. When the organization is able to process large volumes of data or big data, the data can be in different forms through this. So the data can be in different forms. It can be structured data. So the big data can be structured data. So if the big data is being classified as structured data, we are looking at data which is in the form of, it can be diagrams, it could be histograms, it could be pie charts. So the data, if it's structured, it's more of grouped data. So this is data. If it's structured data, this is data which has been presented in models, pictures, or other processing means. So this one is processed data that has been put into different structures. Then we have unstructured data. So for structured data is easy to analyze than unstructured data. So if the data is unstructured data, this is information which has been gathered. But not complying with any model. This type of data is very difficult to analyze because it's not following any model, it's not following any structure that we can be able to tell is, so it means we need to first of all structure the data so that we can be able to make good decisions. So this type of data is difficult. It's difficult to analyze. So this type of data can be difficult to analyze. So as an organization, we need to have systems that can handle large volumes of data. So what can give rise to the organization to say this is large volumes of data? What are the characteristics of large volumes of data? So characteristics of big data. For us to say this data that we've generated is big data. Characteristics of big data. So the characteristics of big data. So if data is said to be big data, we can say it's big data because of its we have 5 V's of big data. Data can be said to be big data because of its volume. Data can be said to be big data because of its velocity. Data can be said to be big data because of its variety. Data can be said to be big because of its veracity. These are the 5 V's of big data. The last one is value. So we can classify the data as being big data because of its volume. So this one is the common one, where we say this is the organization is processing big data because the transactions are Rwanda. So if the organization is processing large volumes of transactions, we are able to process transactions of 3 million people. That is large volume of data. So the data is said to be large volumes of data because of volume. So we can look at the quantity of the data. So large volumes means it's large, is big data. Large volumes means it's big data. So large volumes of data makes it big data. Sometimes the data is big, not because of volume. Sometimes the data is big, not because of volume, but because of velocity. So the data can be classified as being big data because of its velocity. The rate at which you are receiving. So the organization is receiving 10-cent transactions we are receiving the 10 cents transactions every second. It can be small amounts, but the rate at which you are receiving the data, if the rate is very high, it becomes big data because it becomes difficult to process that data using a manual system. So velocity is the rate at which the data is being received. So if the data is being received more frequently, then we can say it is big data. It is a high velocity. Then also the data can be big because of its different formats. So if the data is coming in different forms, in different variety, it can also be regarded as being big data. So big data can be coming in different forms. So variety, if the data is coming from different sources and in different forms. So if the data is coming from different sources and sometimes in different forms, that one can be classified as big data. Then again, data can be said to be big data based on the quality of the data we have generated. So if it is of high quality, we can say it is a high veracity. So veracity of the data is looking at the quality. If we are going to make the decisions that are likely to change the position of the company with this data, we can say it's big data. So if we are looking at the quality of the data, that's the veracity. So data can be said to be big data because of the 5 V's. Then lastly, value. A high value data, value goes with veracity. A high value data, that which gives us a lot of benefits. That one is big data. So data can be said to be big data because it is of high value. So if we use this data, we are likely to make good decisions. So data can be said to be big because of its value to the organization. Then, why, as an organization, should we invest in tools that can be able to manage big data? It's very important that as an organization, we have tools that can be able to generate large volumes of data. So the reason why I said it, Shanga, the reason why we pay organizations like Anana Facebook or Anana TikTok, why do we pay maybe to advertise? Is because they have access to big data. So they can have information regarding, they can have information connecting maybe 1 million people. So you are guaranteed if you market with them, they can be able to display your data to those people. So they can have that ability because they are in control of large volumes of data. So it means when Vesanima accounts with them, if they want to advertise, they can send everyone a message. It's possible for them to do that. So agencies now, so those that companies now can pay these firms with access to large volumes of data to do the marketing for them. Why? Because the companies won't be having that data. So having large volumes of data, being able to process large volumes of data can have advantages. So importance of big data. What are the importance of being able to manage big data? Lisa, the importance of big data. So the first importance of big data, it can help us if as an organization we have access to big data, we can be able to use that data to gain competitive advantage. So if we have big data, we can be able to, if we have big data, we can be able to gain competitive advantage. So being in access to big data can help us as an organization to have a competitive advantage. So if we have a competitive advantage, we have something that we can use to win over our competitors. So being in access to the behaviors of all customers, if you can be able to manage large volumes of data, each customer, what is it that they want nowadays? That can help you make better decisions and win over your competitors. Being in access of big data makes it easy for the firm to advertise and market its products. Makes it easy to market the products. Why do we pay those content creators? You realize that the content creators, they get paid for advertising. Why are they paid for them to advertise? It's because they have access to large volumes of people. They are able to, they have a large number of followings. They have access to big data. So being in access to big data can actually aid in the marketing process. It can be an advantage when we are marketing. Being in access to big data, it helps you to gain a better understanding of the market. So being in access to big data can give you a better understanding of the market. You'll be in a better position to understand the market behaviors. Being in access to big data can give you a better understanding of the market condition. Then also, if we have the data mining tools, this can assist in increasing our growth opportunities. So we can now be able to analyze the data and see how we can grow, which products we can offer. This can enable growth. In the organization. So it can enable growth. Being able to access these large volumes of data, analyze the data, can enable growth. It can enable growth. Then having the data is one thing. Then being able to make good decisions out of it. Or maybe let's start with, since we have put the importance, let's talk about the challenges of big data. Being in access of big data can also bring challenges. Being in access of large volumes of data can bring challenges. So what challenges can be associated with big data? So big data, we might end up, if the organization is in access of big data, we can have irrelevant information may be generated, which makes decision-making process difficult. Might end up processing irrelevant information, making decision-making process difficult. Then also, large volumes of data reduces security. So it means there are high chances of that data being accessed by hackers, because large volumes of data, it becomes difficult to manage all of it. So we might end up losing some of the, we might end up allowing, because as we are trying to generate the data from a wider pool, we might also attract cyber risks. So you can say the data may be difficult to manage, making it prone to cyber risks. So the data may be difficult to manage, making it prone to cyber risks. So it becomes easy for the hackers to gain access if we have large volumes of data. Then lastly, we can also talk about the other challenge we might talk about under big data is failure to interpret the data. Failure to interpret the data. So we might have the data, but we need tools that can help us interpret the data. So if we fail to have the data analytic tools, we might still have the data and fail to make use of the data in decision making. We might fail to interpret the meaning of the data. Failure to interpret the data. Failure to interpret the data. So we might have the data, but fail to come up with an interpretation of what the data means. We might fail to interpret what the data means. So these are some of the challenges we might face if we are processing large volumes of data. So let's move on and talk about data analytics. So as an organization, we need data analytic tools. So we need data analytic tools. So data analytic tools. So the data analytic tools or data analysis, this helps us as an organization to understand the behaviors of the data. So it assists, or it is the processing of the data in order to understand the behaviors of the data. It is the processing of the data in order to understand the behavior of the data, or how of the behavior of the, not of the data, but the behavior of the population we understudy. So we want to understand how are people behaving in this particular way. So coming up with an interpretation of how the data is distributed. So in data analytics, we can have what we call data testing. We have the following terms that we can come across. We have data testing. We have data mining. We have data testing, we have data mining, we have predictive analysis. Predictive analytics. We can also talk about statistical analytics. Statistical. So with data testing, data mining, predictive analytics, and statistical analytics. Okay, what are these? What are these? Just a moment. So the data analytics study, we have data testing. So for data testing, this involves the use of hypothesis testing or other testing models in order to understand the behavior of the data. So this uses the testing models or hypothesis on the existing data to understand the trends. So we use hypothesis testing to test the claims, to test the data, so that we have a more understanding of the data. So hypothesis testing is one of the models used to have an understanding of the data you've generated. We are testing the claims on that data. If the data involves people, we might take a sample from the people that we think maybe these ones are behaving in this manner because they like our product. We can take a sample and we ask them physically if we interview them and we hear from them whether that behavior is because they love the product. So hypothesis testing, we are testing the existing data we have generated. So we have hypothesis testing. Then besides the hypothesis testing, we have also, besides data testing, we have predictive. Let's start with data mining. So there is data mining. So data mining is the process of analyzing. It's not gathering the data, but it is the process of analyzing. It is the process of analyzing the data in order to determine the trends. Or patterns within the data. So is it an upward trend? Does it show that the sales are increasing? Does it show that the customers are satisfied? So we are analyzing the data so that we get a certain trend from the data. That's data mining. We want to see the relationship within the data. Is there a connection within the data? Is there a relationship? Is there a connection within the data? That is data mining. Then besides data mining, we have predictive analytics. Predictive analytics, this involves, this is a type of data mining where we are using techniques such as machine learning, AI. So this is a type of data mining. So this is a type of data mining that uses, this is a type of data mining that uses machine learning or other predictive tools. To predict the future, events. So we want to use the current data to predict the future events. We want to use the existing data to predict the future events. We want to use the existing data to predict the future events. So we want to try to predict what is going to be the outcome in the future. We are using the existing data to try to estimate the outcome that is going to take place. Like If it is predictive analytics, it's using machine learning tools where we use machine learning and AI to try to predict what, from the data that it has generated, it tries to predict what is the outcome. Maybe we have used the sales in the last year. So the predictive analytics will tell us whether, looking at the data we have for the sales for last year, does it show that this year people might love the product? And which areas should we distribute our product to? So it is helping us predict a future outcome. So using the data that we've gathered for what has already occurred, it uses that data to predict the future outcome. Yes. Yes, it's type of data mining. When you are analyzing the data, from the relationships that the data has, we are trying to see what is the outcome. So we've used the data ratinaro now tichiona relationship iripo padata maybe iripo pamarketing yatakaita nemasales atakaita paexisting data ratinaro taona relationship iripo, then we want to use that relationship yataona paexisting data to forecast kuti zvii zvichakwanisa kunge zvichiitika in the next coming period. Yes, it is actually a forecasting technique, but that is using the data that we have gathered.
I don't know but can we assume that the technical coordination can it be used?
Yes, it is actually used for data mining, because data mining is simply a broad term that is talking about analyzing the data. So you can analyze the data to find the correlation of the data. You can analyze the data to find the patterns, or not, is it increasing or decreasing. You can analyze the data to find the relationship. Is there a connection? If we increase the price, does this also affect the other one? So yes, it's a tool. Correlation is a tool that can be used in data mining. Then let's move on. Statistical analytics. So statistical analytics is after we have identified the data, we can then be able to model it into different statistical, let's put this one down. So statistical analytics. This presents the data into statistical models. That can be used for data visualization. Such as bar charts. We can have the bar charts, we can have the histograms. So it then puts the data into statistical visualizations that you can be able to, it summarizes the data, then puts it into the various data visualization ways, such as you can then now see the data on a bar graph. We can then see the data on a histogram after it is summarized the data that we have gathered. So it summarizes the data into various statistical models. It summarizes the data into various statistical models. So these are some of the terms we can come across in data analytics. So in data analytics, we are analyzing the data that we have gathered. We are analyzing the data that we have gathered so that we can be able to understand the data more. We can be able to make better decisions out of the data that we have gathered. Then I think regarding information and technology system, we have covered the key issues. So you still also need to read and add more to that skeleton that I've given you. Maybe let's just close with data visualization. So these are just basics. Data visualizations, these are ways in which the data can be presented. Can I check that? Hello? I'm all right, sir. All right. Yes, sir. Okay. It's okay, sir. I'll get back to you right now. I'm in a lecture, so I'll get back to you once I'm done. Then we can talk. I think you sent me your number, so I'll get back to you once. It's Mr. Mahachi. All right, fine. It's all right, sir. Okay, so data visualization. So data visualizations, Triguti, how can we present the data after we've mined or after we've generated the data so that we can easily see the data? It can be presented in different formats. So the data can be presented on the histogram. So after the data has been generated, we can show the data on the histogram. The data can be shown on a bar graph. The data can be shown on a pie chart. The data can be shown on a line graph. Can talk about a scatter diagram. So the data can be shown on a histogram, a bar graph, a pie chart, a line graph, a scatter diagram. These are different ways to show or represent the data that we have gathered. Now, let's get to move. I think we're done with the information and technology. Now, let's get into the costing methods. Costing methods. Costing methods. Ana utofona kuti munhu kwaenda akati nya asawana mota yakukanzira. Unaona mota ya claim kwa. Okay, costing methods. So in your absence, we looked at Nasira Bashi, performs of big data. And so we looked at the characteristics of big data. I'll send you the Excel sheet and the slide as well after the session. So